Now by Leanne Gardner, and Leanne's an old friend. We've known each other for over 14 years. We both were kind of helping a church do a new startup, a plant. And you were a nurse, and you were doing hospice care at that time and pouring your heart out in that, I remember. You continue to be a nurse, and your mom as well.
Yep.
And when I met you, you were a concerned mom.
Yes.
There was something going on with your son. He was in his late teens. And why don't you share just a little bit with our viewers about what was happening?
He was 17.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the same friends that he'd always had. I didn't know any of his new friends. He was not doing well in school, which was unusual for him. He had a bad attitude and thought he wasn't going to live past high school, so he didn't really need to apply himself.
And that's significant because when you've got a teenage son who's telling you, I don't think I'm going to live past high school, how did that make you feel?
Scared.
Yeah.
Panicked.
Yeah. So what did you do? What happened? What happened from that point?
I asked him, are you doing drugs? No, Mom, I'm just tired. And I knew in my gut that there was something really wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't know quite what it was.
Yeah. So what did you do?
I tried to get him to open up because we'd always been able to talk, and that was another thing. He wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah.
So then there was an event.
Which was?
I found my proof.
Yeah.
And I showed it to him.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you're at a crossroads in your life. And you can do these drugs and you know where it's going to head.
Right.
And I won't enable you to do that. You have to get out. Or you can get some help.
Yeah.
And he was quiet. I says, think about it.
Yeah.
So he did, and the next morning he came to me and he says, Mom, I want some help. And so then I had to figure out, well, how I was going to get some help.
Right.
And I knew you did counseling.
Right.
And so I went to you.
Yeah.
I told you, I'm really concerned. I need help.
Right.
And you were great.
Well, I know we plugged him into that. Tell me about what did you see, and of course you weren't in on the sessions as he was working through that, but tell me about what you saw as he went through the process.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was grateful because I think you only charged me for the test that he had to take. You didn't charge me for it.
Right.
And I think it was the second meeting after he had with you. He said, Mom, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. And he said, I have to tell you what I've been doing. And I was floored. It was worse than I even imagined.
Right.
And but he said, I'm done with it. I'm not doing anymore, and I'm not going to do anymore. And to this day, he won't touch a drug.
Yeah.
He will not. And
so he continued on.
yeah,
And what's been the outcome?
he won't touch drugs.
Yeah.
He's got a job,
Yeah.
and he's got a wife, and he's got a new baby,
Yeah, he's a
and
father
he's
for the first
happy.
time now.
And
He's involved with his church, isn't he?
he's very involved with his church. As a matter of fact, he is. I am proud of him. Can I share why I'm so
Sure,
proud of him?
absolutely.
Okay, he was living with this gal.
Yeah.
And he got under the conviction of the Holy Spirit. So unbeknownst to me, him and his girlfriend, they got married in December and didn't tell anybody because they still wanted to have the wedding.
Yeah.
Then she wound up pregnant after they were married.
Right.
So that was a miracle too. So he's doing great.
Yeah.
He's sound mind, he's sound body, and
Right.
I can only thank God and you. You are the
Wow.
vessel, and I have two sisters who never came out of drugs.
Yeah.
And so I am so grateful because I know the path that it can take.
Yeah. And, people still make mistakes, but it's great to hear that, that the work that he did to walk away from what was putting him in a pretty downward spiral, which he relied on Christ for, then changed his life. And, that really is the entire reason why the Scott Free Clinic is going to come into existence, is to help people change their lives. And one of the things that we are going to do, it's foundational to this ministry, is it is the Scott Free Clinic The idea is that all of our services, no matter what they are, no matter what a person's capacity to do anything is there will be no charges. We want to eliminate that barrier of cost so that people like your son, a 17-year-old can't pay the bills, and most families with 17-year-olds can't handle that cost either. So what do you imagine if we're able to open our doors up to families like that and say, listen, there's no charge, just come and get the help? How do you think that could impact families?
Immensely. You're going to keep families together. You're going to keep them out of psych wards. You're going to keep them out of prisons. You're going to keep them out of depression. You're going to keep them walking with the Lord.
And of course, it does come down to they've got to want the help.
This is true.
Yeah, and the great thing with your son is he had come to that place between you challenging him and the challenge that we made to him. He stepped up and wanted to make the change. If you want help and can remove those barriers of help, lives can be changed. That's what we're hoping to do at Scott Free Clinic.
I think it would be a blessing to everybody that walked through those doors.
Well, Leanne, I really appreciate your coming today and sharing your story, your son's story, and Lord willing, and the help of our viewers, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to open those doors to families so that they can get the help they need. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, we've stepped away just for a few minutes from the clinic office, and we've gone down the street to visit with Chad Ward. And Chad, it's been several years since we first met. Been a while since I've seen you.
Quite a few years.
Yeah. And when I met you, you were a youth pastor, and you've gone on since then. You've served as an elder, and you are now continuing to be involved in your church, and a lot going on. But you were a younger guy. You were fresher in your marriage, and you didn't have any kids when we first met. But you did have a challenge, and so I was wondering if you'd just share a little bit from why we connected there a long time ago.
Okay. Well, originally when we first came to see you, I was in pretty good distress. My wife had just told me that she didn't want to be married to me anymore.
Yeah.
And here I am, a pastor, and I'm counseling students, and all of a sudden my own marriage is failing, and I thought maybe my job was on the line, all this stuff. And
what did you think? Because it's kind of a bit of a gut punch, and I remember your wife saying, I don't know if I want to be married to him. When you heard that, how did that affect you initially?
I was flattened. I mean, the woman that I loved didn't want to be with me anymore, and I didn't know how to handle it.
How long had you been married at that time?
We've been married probably 4, maybe 5 years.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So we, after coming to you, we just realized the huge thing we were missing in our marriage. Well, 2 things. One is I had thrown my entire life into my ministry, and so I had spent all the time I had with all the students at the church and with the people of the church, and meanwhile she was at home waiting for me to get home. And so it's just incredibly hard for her to go through that. Also, we didn't talk. I mean, we talked. We talked about our day, but one of the things you said always stuck to me. He goes, well, it's amazing that 2 people can live in the same house and not have the same life. As that we were going parallel, we weren't connecting with each other. And I think that's one of the greatest tools that I learned from you was emotional communication. It's not just talking, but finding out what's going on in the heart and mind of your partner.
Yeah. And I know that you struggled. I remember the look on your face as the pain that you were going through, but you worked through that. Why don't you just share just a little bit about how you worked through it? How did you come through that and get to the other side?
Well, there's a lot of crying. I'm not afraid to admit that I cried a lot.
Sure.
But then also just a lot of really intense and awkward and hard conversations. I mean, I had to sit and listen to my wife tell me the reasons why she didn't want to be with me. And nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
And we just started listening to each other and started really talking to each other and hearing what was going on in the heart of the other person. And through, I mean, it wasn't quick. It was a while.
It's work.
Yeah.
It is work.
I mean, I can remember just going, when is this going to be over?
Right.
And it took a while. But I also remember the day that my wife told me that she wanted to be married to me again. And I remember that day very specifically because we were in your office and you asked her the question and she said yes.
Yeah.
Because for a while she said, yeah, I want to because I'm a Christian woman. I know that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. There was a duty attached to it.
But then when she made the choice, you know, after us connecting to want to again,
Yeah.
it was like I got married all over again.
Yeah.
And so,
And you kind of did, in the sense of you've come a long way.
yeah.
Your wife wouldn't say anything along those lines anymore. You've been married quite a while, and you now have, from my understanding, 4 kids. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're coming up on 16 years
Right.
together, and we have 4 children. You know, we had a rough patch in the middle, but the last one's it's just been amazing, and our lives have continued to grow together. We do have 4 children.
In your marriage?
I would put it up against any marriage out there. Not that you should compare marriages,
Understand.
but just the fact that
Right.
you know the strength that has come from developing our relationship,
Right.
and what I call being a student of my spouse,
Right.
is just you know, when you come from a place that says I don't want to be with you, that's pretty much the rock bottom.
Yeah.
And so if you can come back from that, then I think that you can handle anything in life. And that's how we approach life now. Is like we still have rough times. We still argue and fight over different things. But our always fallback is this can't be worse.
Right.
So we got to be able to fix it.
Right.
And so we do. We just go from there. When you come past that and know that it can work and that God can heal anybody, no matter how desperate your situation,
Right.
it gives you so much more power to go forward and to live life and to kind of move past the little things that come up, because we still fight.
Sure.
And we still have arguments, and
You're still human.
yeah,
Right.
they're not knockdown dragouts anymore.
Right.
But they are still, you know, heartfelt.
Are you afraid those words, I don't want to be married to you anymore, will ever come again?
No, and I hesitate only because I also deal with insecurity in my life in a whole different way.
Right.
And I think that sometimes, you know, past history, Satan will try to use that against you. But
It'd scare you.
yeah, but I know that my wife and I will never be at that place again.
Yeah. That's exciting. You did say something that probably made things more difficult for you. It's one thing for any man to be told by their wife, I don't want to be married to you anymore. It is kind of another thing when you're a minister and you're feeling like I'm living in this fishbowl. You know, people are looking at my life. I'm supposed to be putting an example out there. And now you see that example going south because you mentioned, you know, here you are as a minister and you're trying to have that example. How did that add pressure to what was going on in your life?
Well, that was probably the most tremendous addition, because for me, not understanding, you know, being a minister and the church culture, sometimes you're looked at as you have to be at a higher level than other people. Not that we are.
Right.
We're just people.
Perfect people.
But we're a bunch of imperfect people, tried to live perfectly. But the fact that you have other people that look up to you, in my case, I had students, you know. Here I have, you know, 50, 60 students at the church that look up to me and want to see, and I'm supposed to be an example of how their life can work.
Right.
And just honestly, when she first said she didn't want to be married, I was afraid, because I was afraid that, one, the church would fire me, because who wants a minister that's can't even hold his own marriage together?
Right.
And two, just that all these people would be disappointed by me.
So you must have felt as though it wasn't just your marriage falling apart, it was your life.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely a fear for
Yeah.
everything that I knew.
Yeah.
I will say this, the church did not fire me.
Right.
In fact, they went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful church body, and they came, supported us, surrounded us,
Right.
and helped us in every way imaginable.
Right.
So,
Chad, let's talk about a couple different things. You know, the Scott Free Clinic the idea is let's remove the barrier of cost. You know, there's so many couples out there who need help, so many families who need help. One of the primary reasons why they do not get that help is they can't afford it. You know, most people just can't afford to go get marriage counseling or family counseling or the help to save their marriages and their homes and those most important things in life. You've experienced a couple different things. You've experienced personally a time where, hey, I need help. But also, I know as a youth minister and as an elder, You know, you've seen marriages in trouble, you've seen homes, you've seen families that were broken and hurting. How can this help? How can this be a help to them? And what would you say to the men out there who are hurting and haven't gotten help, and the dads and the moms out there?
Well, first off, I just think the fact that you're offering it as scot-free is an incredible help, because I know for us, I was a minister and I didn't make very much money.
Right.
You know, we were
Yeah.
living in a little tiny apartment and we didn't have the money. And so thanks to your generosity in our situation, we were able to make it happen. But I know a lot of families, you know, one is, if you've never been through any kind of counseling, you don't see the value of it.
Right.
And now I even tell people to try to emphasize what the value of a godly counseling is that I would sell everything that I had if it would save my marriage through godly counseling again.
Right.
And so I think that people don't understand the value. They don't understand what the power is. And money is a huge barrier in our society.
Right.
And so if they come up against that, it's almost an automatic, no for some people.
Right.
And they I can't ever emphasize enough the power that it has, because, you're a man and I know that, but the tools that you gave us saved our marriage.
Yeah.
God gave you an ability to give us tools to help us through the roughest time of our life.
Right.
And if people can only know that that's on the other side of the fence, that it doesn't have to be desperation all the time.
Right.
That's why this is such a great opportunity.
There really is hope, even though it feels hopeless.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think some people get caught up in this spiral of negativity
Right.
that they can't see that there's a way out.
Yeah. I do remember, when we talked a couple of years ago, I think it was, you mentioned something about you and your wife took some of what we went through and you've shared it some with other couples. Is that?
Well, being an elder of the church, I've also had the opportunity to sit with some couples in our church that just were having a rough time,
Right.
and some of the tools that you've given us, we actually kept our binder
Good.
of all the papers, and
Right.
we would take them out. Oh, there's no copyrights, but we would take them
Right.
out and kind of walk with them through it, and we were able to help a couple of families
that's great.
get through some harder times.
Yeah. That's great. And I think that speaks really a lot to you and your wife in that, it isn't what you've been helped and now you're sharing that help with others. So that's fantastic. Chad, thank you so much for taking your time to not just have us in your home, but to share your story with our viewers. We appreciate you passing that on and for having us in your home.
Thank you for
Thanks so much.